this would happen from time to time. A doctor came up to me and they try to sound smart and like they're helpful when normally they make stuff worse normally in an emergency call, because most of them aren't trained for pre-hospital emergencies. Most of them don't even work in a hospital. So
Right.
he came up to me and he starts asking me if we have any way to monitor someone's heart. And
Oh
he's just
my
like, dude, go
God.
away. Like, literally go away. You're probably a dermatologist and you have no idea how to treat an no, it's the truth. Like, a doctor has way more training and has a deeper level understanding of like human physiology. Yes, 100%
Absolutely.
agree with that statement, but they are not trained. Most of them are not trained in pre-hospital care. They do not know how to manage a scene of an emergency,
Right.
and they're asking questions like that when it's like, okay, we have other things to focus on. So that would happen. Oh, I wouldn't say a lot, but from time to time. If it was like, say, that person was an emergency room doctor or something that just happened to be there, or like,
Right.
okay, you're legit, like you at least have an understanding, but it's a whole different world pre-hospital versus people that work in the hospital, or like someone like a dermatologist that doesn't work in an emergency setting.
Right.
like why you ask, like, dude, like, come on, they're just trying to sound smart, that's all.
I think the mole might be precancerous. Dude, he's suffocating.
I know.
Like-
I can see he's being dragged in from the water. I see a mole, so
Right.
we
Make
got to
sure we
make
get
sure
on
it's
that.
taken care of.
Yeah.
It's like, get out of here, dude.
That's really interesting, because my next question for you was going to be, were you ever in the situation where somebody came in who wasn't, a doctor or, whatever version of healthcare provider professional who came in and was really helpful, regardless of whether they were, because who knows, maybe a dermatologist comes in and does exactly the right thing that is helpful for you, right? He doesn't get involved and he like helps whatever, he's the one to call 911, or she, whatever,
Yeah,
they call 911. So
right.
has that ever happened where it's like,
I would say there's been more times where it's been neutral. I can't, at the top of my head, at least think of a time where there was a positive impact from a healthcare provider being there. So nurses
Interesting.
are a lot more common than doctors, right? So like,
Right.
every once in a while we've been on a call and a family member, there was a nurse, and the
Mm-hmm.
times actually that it would help, like, they would maybe let us know they're a nurse, but they let us do our thing. Like,
Interesting. Like
so,
somebody else
but
who's used to that kind of be like what that takes. They're used to
yeah,
stepping
so
back and letting you do what you need to do.
exactly. So when they're like that, it would be most helpful. But like, I do understand how easy it would be to get in the way. For example, like, if something happened, while I was off duty and I saw an emergency, even if the fire department pulled up, the ambulance pulls up, and all that stuff, it may be hard for me at first to just sit there and kind of kick back and not do much, because I'm used to handling the situation. But I would definitely have to remind myself, okay, like, they have all the equipment, like, they are running this call. I'm just there, and having another person there, like, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, like, it's not gonna help necessarily. But like, doctors, nurses, medics, firefighter, all that, like, can definitely, I'm sure, be the worst. Actually, probably the worst patients. That would probably be more accurate, and can definitely get in the way, like, on some emergency calls or whatever. But yeah, most of the time, people are more helpful when they tell us just kind of accurately what happened to the patient, like why they called 911, and then kind of let us do our thing from there and not try to stand in the way. That's when people are most helpful. But I don't know if we ever had a doctor that was helpful, though.
Yeah.
Not that I can think of.
Well, and I suppose it doesn't. It's kind of a almost a loaded question to begin with, because the reality, I would imagine, and tell me if this is accurate, it would seem like you're anything a doctor would say, even if it's something that's accurate and ultimately helpful towards a diagnosis and subsequent, recovery, anything that they're going to say is really counter to the purpose of what you're there for.
Yep.
Because what you're there for
100.
is to move them
You said that right.
safely,
Yep.
right? Your job is not to treat them. Your job is to do the treatment that is reasonable to do right in the moment that you're trained for.
Yep.
And then pass it off to somebody in
Yes.
their situation, their OR or
Yep.
whatever, ER.
Yep. You said that exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. Like, we're there to treat them in a pre-hospital setting.
Right.
We're not there to do some long-term prognosis and ongoing care.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to, like, first keep someone alive if it comes to that point, and then treat them in a pre-hospital setting. Like, like pre-hospital, we have, I don't know, 40 drugs, maybe less, that we give. I actually can't remember. Maybe it's a little bit less than that. But in the hospital, they have access to hundreds of drugs because it's different. Like they're the ongoing care. Like we're not going to respond to an emergency call and then give someone antibiotics or something. You know what I mean? That's not what we do. So, but yeah, it's just funny. Like you can tell when someone, like the situation I was just describing to you, when the physician, it's like they just want everyone to know that they're a doctor and they're around or whatever. It's like it's really obvious because you're asking me if I have something to monitor someone's heart. Like, so just that question alone, you have no idea that the equipment and the tools and the medications that we carry. So it's like there's nothing someone could say that would be helpful at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also, made me feel better about the fact that yesterday or a couple days ago, I was driving down the freeway and I was fairly near my house, and there was an police officer's SUV was pulled over, and it just looked like they had pulled somebody over or whatever. But as always happens, people would slow down to see what's going on, and so I slowed down. And I hate this. I hate this that I hate that about people, and then also I'm about to admit that I looked too. But but I drove by, and to be fair, and this is the problem with this situation, is it gotten slow enough for me to do it safely, but then of course anyway, that's not the point. That's a whole other thing. But I drove by, and there wasn't a car in front of the car that the police car, but there was an officer that was sitting on the ground, and his legs were out. Like he was conscious and like up, and you can see he was with it. But he was sitting on the ground on his butt with his legs out, and I think one sleeve was pulled up, one pant leg, and like the person in me was like, "Oh shit, I gotta pull over and like see if I can help this person, right?" Because who knows? Like they're on the side of a freeway, sitting on the ground, and they're an officer, so it's not like they're some random person who is just like, "I'm deciding to sit down here," right?
Right.
And I was driving, and my instincts were pull off, turn around, get off freeway, loop back around, pull over. And I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? He's conscious. I know he's got his radio. His lights are on. He's safe in terms of, not getting. He's in front of his car with the lights on. That have the lights on. Is there anything I can do to help this situation? And the answer was really no. Because all I was really going to do if I had pulled over, as much as I would have wanted to help, would have been like, hey, dude, you okay? Because what am I going to do? Call 911? Like he's effectively done that, right? Somebody's already on their way, presumably. So I even though I felt, and I was kind of torn at first. I was like, clearly, so I'm not that it's the exact same situation, but it is further reinforcement for me and all the other laymen out there who wonder, and especially all the people who are out there on the road who are like, oh, I don't know what to do. Get the F over to the side of the road. Done. That's it. Like, you know what I mean? However you have to do that without hitting another car, do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And dude, the thing too, like going on calls on the side of the freeway, the most dangerous place to have an emergency call. And I didn't understand that like early in my career. Like, people had told me that, like, we never want to just hang out on the freeway longer than we have to. Yeah. So if you pulled over in your car, even more dangerous, obviously, than like if we had a fire engine blocking the scene. So if someone crashes, most likely they'll hit the fire engine. Nothing will happen to us, but you with a normal sized car and people driving that turn their head and all that stuff. So that was definitely smart. I feel like the time you'd actually pull over is if you could tell like something was obviously wrong, like you already mentioned, like someone's out, profusely bleeding or unconscious and something like that, then yes, like let's take that risk and assist the officer. But yeah, he has a mic right here, a radio right here. I'm sure there was someone a few minutes out. Do you have any idea like what happened to him, or could you not tell at that point?
My impression would have been that he honestly, so I don't want to like add story and like narrative, but in my mind, like it seemed like he pulled somebody over, and it seemed like whether it was an interaction with a person or if it was like him, an environmental interaction, it seemed like something in the midst of ticketing somebody that he like hurt himself somehow. Whether it was, I don't want to be like it was an interaction with this other person, but here's the thing: is the person he pulled over wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So I think probably
Yeah.
it was an interaction with the person because realistically, if it wasn't, if he had slipped and hurt himself, the person who, was ticketing would have gotten out and stayed with him while he was waiting for somebody to get
Right.
there. So probably my guess is that he was like went up to somebody, was like kind of like at ease, like not really on his, really on guard, and somebody was just like, hey, and then just jammed off when he was like talking to them or some shit,
Yeah.
like probably got his foot run over or something, I don't know, but
Yeah.
he would definitely, he was fine from a brain standpoint, from where I was standing. Who knows in reality, but
Yeah, dude, it's funny. That reminds me too, like talking about running into emergencies like that. This happened 2 times to me right when I started EMT school. So this is way before the fire department, way before I was a medic, literally in EMT school, which is normally like the first step in that whole journey, right? So I'd been an EMT student for a couple days, I think. That's it. So no idea about anything yet.
Damn.
And
Really?
I think I had just finished school. No, it was right before I was going to go to class that day. I was walking up to my apartment complex, and right in front of our complex, there was a guy unconscious on the ground. And I was just like, "Are you kidding, dude? I almost peed my pants." Like,
Yeah.
I just started school. Like, I didn't know what to do. I called 911, and I almost started CPR in this guy. He had a seizure, so you don't do CPR on people that had seizures.
Oh, that's good.
But I was standing there about to start CPR. I was shaking and scared because like I still didn't know anything.
Right.
Anyways, the fire department came. One of the stations was right down the street, which is funny because at the time I didn't know they were my future coworkers. I still remember some of the guys that pulled up. Anyways,
Nice.
though, so that happened. And then a few weeks later, if my timeline's correct, so it still is brand new in EMT school. I was driving toward Mission Bay, and for people that live in San Diego, they know exactly what I'm talking about. And there was this little like hill where like a lot of people on their bikes, they ride up this little hill, and then you drop down and you get closer to the water over there, or closer to the beach. So anyways, I'm pulling up, and the speed limit there is probably around 40 or so, and I see a guy laying on the ground on the side of the road, and he looked messed up. Like his bike was, I don't know, 20 feet past him or something. And so I stopped. I got out, and this dude had got hit by a car. The car took off and left him there. And so this dude is profusely bleeding from his head. I can't remember if he was unconscious yet. He was completely out of it. I do remember that. So again, this is like, I'm a brand new EMT student, don't really know anything. So I pulled over, and then about 5 other people stopped to help or whatever. And same exact thing. The fire department ended up coming. I saw a bunch of my future coworkers or whatever. But I just thought the timing was pretty hilarious. Like, this happens, right when I start, right when I start school. So I was like, a scared little student or whatever. But it reminded me of like your story of when you saw a cop on the side of the road the other day.
I almost feel like that's like meant to be almost, you know what I mean? Like you're like going along your life. You're like, oh, I'm doing this new thing. And then life is like, hey, here's the reasons why you should be doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? That's crazy. Talk about kind of being thrown into the deep end as a student, because I'd imagine the hardest thing as a fresh student like that is to not overstep your bounds, as it sounds like you were about to, right? Thank goodness you didn't. But that could have been a whole other thing, mostly on you, because I think, Good Samaritan laws probably would have protected you. But
yeah, at that point they would have, for sure.
That said, that would have changed your course potentially, because if you had hurt somebody trying to help them, right?
Right.
So interesting. Yeah. I as a trainer, I'm certified to administer CPR, but I've never done so, and never been in a situation that called for it. And every once in a while I wonder to myself how readily that kind of information will be available to me. To be fair, I'm fairly good in stress, emergency type stressful situations, so I think I would have the wherewithal to do it. But and the other thing, to be fair, is because I've been a trainer now for a few years, and actually I used to work with kids, so I did it when I was young. I've certified 4 or 5 times in my life, so I'd like to think that that's enough time going in and just kind of going through that muscle memory just to activate in a crisis. But I don't know that, and hopefully I don't find out. But I feel like I'm glad either way that I have that information, and I hope that if I'm ever called on to use it, that I use it for good and not for bad.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
dangerous
For
too.
me, I mean, I was in my early 20s, and so it was. I remember that might have been part of it, but just so tunnel vision. You know what I mean? Because like seeing this stuff up close and personal. I was like, dang, this is crazy. So I just remember that was like the main thing is feeling very tunnel vision and like, man, what am I getting myself into with this career? Like, I just got a little taste, and it was, whoo, it was like, full throttle. Like I can't concentrate on anything besides what's in front of me. I mean, over time, after you get more experience, everything slows down, and it's not this huge deal anymore. But in the beginning, you're just like, but I'm sure, like, if someone, unfortunately, if they went into, like, or knock on wood, cardiac arrest in front of you, and you've been through, CPR training a bunch, I'm sure you would do just fine in that situation. And plus, like, the way we were training people, especially the last few years in the fire department, we train people to make it as easy as possible, so you don't have to think too much. Like the two main things that we'd start training people is just to do compressions on them and call 911. That's basically it. The rest, like worrying about the airway and all this other stuff, kind of started throwing that out of there. I mean, you learn it like when you're getting your certification, but the only thing that we'd want people to do is just get on the chest and do compressions, call 911, and then do that until do the compressions until fire department arrives. So
I guess the importance of the compressions and the calling of the of emergency response, really, when you weigh it against trying to do any other actions, like the value is just immeasurable when you compare them, because one, you're immediately getting the people who know what's going on getting there, and you're also doing the only thing that really matters is keeping the heart moving, right, and keeping the blood flow going. Not that, obviously, I don't want to say Jake's the one who's trained all this. I'm just saying, as a layman, or I guess, layman relative to you, right? You really just want to keep that blood flow going, right? So that makes sense, and that was actually my impression from having done it from years, because it's changed since I'd started doing it when I was 12 to now at 32. It's 20 years of doing CPR training. And when we first started, it was exactly what kind of the things you mentioned. It was, what's your name? Go Jeff, and you go call, and there was all the psychology behind it. And it's like, I remember feeling like, fuck, how am I going to remember all this when it comes down to it? And over the different courses I took over the years, I saw it get simplified down to pretty much what you just said. Like, make sure somebody calls 911, get compressions going, and get the zappy going.
Yeah.
The Salator.
The
What is it? I'm drawing a blank.
The AED.
The AED. What was it? What is the actual
AED?
AED. Thank you.
Defibrillator.
Oh, man, that was bugging me. It was just like brain fart. I'm trained to use it, guys. Don't ask me what it's called, but I can slap that bad boy on the 2 points in your chest and let the machine do the rest, which is another beautiful part of kind of technology these days. Is the defibrillator.
I know, I do. It's defibrillator, but like when I try to, I always say it fast because I still feel like I'll say it kind of incorrectly, but it's defibrillator. Yeah, exactly. Covered or chewed over with a Twix or whatever. That commercial, remember? Yeah. Yeah. So,
oh man.
Yeah, good times. But yeah, I would tell people too, when we would respond to cardiac arrest calls, so just about any time if the person would survive, so like, we're there doing CPR and doing the rest of the treatment that we do, the only reason they would even have a chance is if someone was already doing compressions before we got there. So I would tell people, like, every once in a while people would say thank you or whatever they would tell us. I'm saying the only reason they're alive isn't because of us. It's because you started doing compressions before we got here. Because if someone lays, is down for 10 minutes without their heart beating and no assistance with compressions, then their chance is almost zero. So it's always like the survival rate is dependent basically on the person that sees them, calls 911, and that is actually doing compressions.
I always kind of felt like that when I got my CPR training, that was something that everybody should have. And, for anybody who's listening, take, the expert opinion of Jake here, and, it's not even an opinion. You just offered like very broad and kind of vague, but very clearly accurate data, right? Which is like, if you don't keep the heart pumping, the body is going to die. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not, rocket science, right? But people are scared to take action when, if we just, it seems such a pain in the butt, but if you schedule a class and you go take that class, at least if you're in that situation, you're not going to be a deer in the headlights completely, right? You'll have some kind of knowledge about, how the person in front of you might stay alive, and it's, and hearing me and Jake talk about it should really drive home how really simple it is, because not to say you should do it if you're not certified, but getting certified is really a lot simpler these days than, especially, we talk about The Office a lot because we're big fans of The Office. Like, this is not, Dwight putting the, plastic on his face and, driving the buck knife into so, it's like, it's simpler even than that. Like, although I don't remember last time, I think they did say something about 100 beats per minute or 120.
So the latest update that I went through was at least 110 per minute.
Interesting.
At least, and then upwards of 120. And the way to make it easier for someone to remember is if you can think of the song "Staying Alive." And so you would do compressions to like the beat of that song in your head. That's a really easy way to do that. But hopefully, anyone listening won't ever have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But some people will, because people go into cardiac arrest all the time. It's not like a abnormal thing or anything. But yep, dude, I had to take a second. You're not going to like this, but sorry to brag on you. Brag for you a little bit. Sorry, okay. I have to do it. I knew you wouldn't like it, but so it reminded me this morning. We were talking offline when I gave you that call. So how important it is to honor commitments. Now that's really big with me. That's like one of the most important things a human can do. It's also one of the most simple. Yeah. So like I needed to brag on you for a second for the audience to hear. Because as everyone knows that's listening or has been a listener of the podcast knows, I started this by myself a while ago. And one of the reasons, I was worried about ever having someone else come on is because I've seen time and time again, humans can be humans and don't follow through with commitments. And it's very frustrating. And I feel as though one of the best things that someone can do, this is outside of talent, this is outside of even results you produce, any of that stuff, which is, yes, important, but showing up for what you say you're going to do. So Clayton, I was telling Adeline this earlier too, like every time something mission driven made related, you've shown up every time, and everything's always communicated too. Like, this is not to say one of us isn't gonna have to be flexible about something in the future, but dude, it's been so refreshing working with someone that honors a commitment. And it's kind of funny thinking that we even have to talk about this, but sure. For the little situation that happened this morning that I told you offline about someone not doing that, that has happened. Oh man, I maybe I just didn't realize it when I was younger, but man, it's like a normal thing for people to not follow through with commitments. So I had to brag on you for a second. Sorry if it embarrassed you, but yeah, I had to do it.
I have to say, firstly, I'm really grateful because, it works both ways, as you know. You know what I mean? It's something that, let me rewind. I run 15 minutes behind always. And I remember I had a moment where it was right after I got sober, and I was having regular meetings with this person, and about 2 months in, she was like, "You know what? Thank you for always being on time." This is a guy, I've never been on time to anything in my life, like never ever in my, you know what I mean? Like perpetually, I'm the late guy. Granted, this is, again, like I said, right as I was getting sober, right as I was quitting drinking. So, I was trying to implement a different kind of, credibility or whatever. And And this person saying that to me was just such a moment of eye opening. Because that was something that I would have never gotten before because I was late with everything. And I had never gotten that before. And it feels so good. I remember feeling like this is the way that I want people to feel when they're interacting with me. And, you know, I spent a lot of years saying, this is just the way I am. I'm late. Granted, I was actually beating myself up anyway, so it was kind of beside the point. It was my attempt to like not beat myself up about it, but you know, meanwhile, I was beating myself up about it, you know. But then I had that moment, and it was like, oh, that's how I want people to feel. And you know, let me just take this moment to say, like you said, there's gonna be times where you're gonna be like crap, like, or I'm gonna be like crap, and I'll communicate it to you, but it's gonna, you know, I have to say, this podcast and getting to work with you is making me feel grateful for the exact same thing, because over the years, in the various projects that I've worked on, I've had the same kind of experience you just said. And as a musician, especially, it's one of those things where people get really romantic about work. You know, people are like, especially music work, people are like, oh, I want to be out on that stage. I want to be playing for, you know, 100,000 people. And, you know, the reality of that is there is years of sitting in your room or sitting in a studio or sitting wherever you happen to be in an office, grinding away, doing the things you have to do for that 1 hour you get 10 years down the line to do that, play in front of 100,000 people, if you're lucky. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it goes back to what we were talking about with football and saying, like, what do we really do we enjoy playing the game, or do we enjoy going to practice? Because if we enjoy just doing the game, then, you know, we're not going to enjoy the 80% of the time that's the practice. And that 80% of the time that's the practice is the real body of the work, whether people recognize it who are the viewers or not. So, you know, it might seem like a roundabout way, but for me, though it hasn't been a matter of, well, it is exactly what you're talking about. I've had the same exact thing where folks say they want to do stuff, and then ultimately they don't really, they want to have done stuff. They don't want to do stuff, and doing stuff
really
hurts.
Want it.
Yeah, well, and a perfect example is, and believe me, I'm not patting myself on the back right now. If anyone's listening, that if anything, let this be an example of this, the opposite of that. For anyone who tuned in for the last episode 76, I said something wrong, and I had to go back and I had to do a correction at the end of that, and it hurt. It was a couple days that it hurt, but I made a commitment to come here and be a truthful source of information to our listeners. And so, you know, that fact correction came, and I'll tell you what, that fact correction is coming, you know, next time I say something wrong, even though it hurts.
Oh, dude, the ego for sure. Our ego, it's like we're always in this battle with our ego. I feel like everyone, even people that seem humble, are always in a battle with their ego in some way. You know what I mean?
I would say especially. I'd just say the people who seem humble are usually the people who are at least are self-aware of it, right? They're aware they're battling their ego. You know?
Yeah, because I mean, the ego comes in all forms. It's not just a standard egotistical person that you see that is overly type A and the world is just about them. The ego is that like silent killer, you know, the one that tries to make us feel better when we do wrong. So, oh, you're fine. Yeah. You don't need to improve. You don't need to. It's their fault. Ego is going to love you to death. That's to me, that's a piece of the ego just as much as that type A egotistical person that most of us think of.
Our ego is like a little alcoholic. Like they're you know what I'm saying? They're gonna encourage us when like we feel like shit, and even if we did something shitty, but also there's the dark side, right? Because as soon as your ego is threatened, your ego starts screaming at you and like throwing things. You know what I mean?
Why did I just, when you said our ego is like a little alcoholic, I thought of like a little leprechaun sitting there on our shoulder. Is that weird? Why did I just think of that? Like a little evil leprechaun telling us, "Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine that you're doing that."
I could definitely see it.
Yeah. So, hey, I wanted to bring up actually, maybe this isn't controversial, but I got excited when I saw this. The Olympics is coming up. Did you see the Winter Olympics is coming up soon?
Yeah, I didn't. It came fast for me. I
Yeah.
know people. I've heard people mentioning it, but it was like I was watching something that was like last night, and they're like Winter Olympics, Winter Olympics. I'm like,
Yeah.
holy crap, it's time already.
Yep. So I saw Shaun White's name again.
Mhm.
So most of you know Shaun White's, one of the most known snowboarders
Who is
of
he?
all time and most successful.
Sean.
Saw his name. He
Sean
made the
what?
team again, so he's going to be competing. I think the oldest snowboarder of all time, or at least one of them for the Super Pipe event that he does.
Sick.
And I was thinking about this. I think he is one of the most dominant competitors in the history, not just of snowboarding, of sports. Now, that might seem a little bit far-fetched because, it's hard to compare snowboarding to like
Yeah.
basketball, baseball, football, the more of the mainstream sports. But like, dude, get this, Shaun White, just with the Olympics and the X Games, so like the two biggest events for them, he has like close to 30 medals just in those two. And then I can't even imagine how many medals he has with all the other competitions he's done. And he's won medals with snowboarding and with skateboarding. He went pro in both, and his list of accomplishments is insane. But my favorite part about Shaun White is he lays it all on the table. Like he doesn't play it safe.
Yeah.
If you watch him, he goes full
Yep.
send, even knowing doing that could completely cause him to fail.
And die.
But he's like, I'm
potentially.
here. I'm on the world's biggest stage. I'm going all in. So that is something I really appreciated about watching him. And then also, I met him once when I was a kid at
Cool.
North Star, which is in Tahoe.
Oh, he
So
had full hair then too.
Yep. We were hiking the Super Pipe. I won't want to say together. I wasn't there with him. I looked over and he's hiking right next to me. And he's by himself, like he wasn't even with a crew or anything.
Cool.
And I was like, "What the heck? That's Shaun White." So I started talking to him. He's super cool and super humble. Like
Nice.
we were just talking. He was just being a normal human. Like even though I was watching him do these like back-to-back 1080s and all this crazy stuff, and I wasn't good at Super Pipe at all. That was not my strong suit with snowboarding or anything. But anyways, though, so I would, like I was saying, make that argument that he's one of the most dominant competitors. I know it's so hard to say because obviously Kobe and MJ and all them, but like he, in my opinion, he's up there.
There's two things that make that particularly compelling. One that, snowboarding, for good and or bad or whatever, maybe those aren't even the right qualifiers, but it's such an independent thing. When you're talking about competing, like a linebacker against, a whole 11 guys or, a couple guys he's up against, that's a whole different thing than when you're talking about this guy's walking up and down the mountain by himself all day long, So one, that is kind of extreme on its own, right? And two is the other part is the actual extreme nature of it. When we're talking about Jordan, we're talking about Kobe, when we're talking about any of these great players, Brady. Although a quarterback's not a great example because quarterbacks really do put their body on the line, but when you compare what somebody like Shaun White is doing just in his practice in terms of the danger to his bodily safety, he blows all the other sports out of the water except for maybe hockey. You know what I mean? Hockey is actually, the exception. So I'm so stoked anytime I hear that somebody met a person like that who's mad successful and they have that kind of just real personness to them. And it really, I think, drives home a point of, for me, if like my goal is to get there with something at one point, right? I want to be a master of one of my crafts at one point. And when I think about doing that myself, and I think about how I want to be perceived by other people and how I want to be, do I want to be the one who's talking myself up and, on the surface super arrogant and like, oh, Clayton this and Clayton, I did it by myself and all that? Or do I want to be the guy who's like, yo, thanks, Yep. And the reality is money and success don't mean, to me, It's only speaking for myself. Money and success. Paging Dr. Freud. Money and success don't mean anything if, we lose our sense of peace and well-being in the meantime. And let's be honest, for the most part, and I'm not saying this exclusively, but for the most part, I would guess that people who are really talking themselves up in their own brain and privately tend to be on the less confident side, when you really get down to it. Because, if you're really confident, you don't need to talk yourself up.
Yep. I completely agree with that statement. And the way that I perceived Sean and some other people is absolute confidence, and don't get me wrong, absolute killer. Absolute killer, but human at the same time, and just like acts like a normal person, like doesn't think I am better than you, like holier than thou type of thing, but is a killer with their craft. Yeah. So I love and respect when people are like that, instead of the people that love to lift themselves up. It's not needed, like you said. It's like everyone knows you're good. Why do you need to tell people that? I don't understand that.
Yeah, and a really great example of the opposite of what we were talking about, but kind of the direction of like the good direction we're talking about, is I just saw Steph Curry is the new spokesperson for Subway.
Oh, wait. Did I see him in a commercial for Subway?
Yeah, I just started seeing it last night. I hadn't seen it before the games last night, which we still need to talk about, mofo.
Oh, my gosh.
But hold on, before we talk football, but about Steph Curry, he is the new spokesperson for Subway, or I shouldn't say new. He is the spokesperson for Subway. And I was like, oh, that's so perfect. One, I hate it when athletes promote, like LeBron promoting Sprite. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Sprite. But as, somebody who has such influence over youth, and I'm not making a statement about him. I'm just saying, for me, like, I feel like there are better decisions better companies you can represent, and kind of spread good instead of the potential bad. Like, another one is, it's like people like McDonald's. Like, I don't have anything against McDonald's, but like, we wouldn't pick them up as a sponsor for Mission Driven Made. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. We would not.
So I feel like there was just like ice in your veins when you said that. You're like no world would that ever happen.
I mean, we got that possible sponsorship opportunity recently, like with the supplements, but it's like, it's just not worth it.
No, not at all. Well, and not that we need to talk business on the air, but the reality is we keep chugging along the way we're doing and keep representing ourselves with the integrity that we do. Eventually, even though we won't have that dime in our pocket, sooner than later, eventually we're like, as we talked about, we're going to be able to go and talk to the companies that you and I already use, and we already feel privately strongly about. So
the right people will get aligned with in some capacity.
That said,
future, you know what I mean?
If Power Block ever comes along the way, I will fight you.
He geeks out on those Power Blocks. I don't know. He kind of convinced me though when we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Like, Power Blocks are just so geeky looking, but like
they are.
The utility though. That you were saying the utility, like I could geek out on those again. Like I could see that. So we'll have to see for the future with those.
When you come to California, and we're gonna be doing the podcast in person, and I'm gonna be like, oh, so what do you think, Jake? Just like subconsciously or not subconsciously, just driving it home.
Yeah. Dude,
listen to your heart.
Oh gosh, that's a whole nother story. No one has any idea what that was. We'll get to that.
That'll be a callback, guys.
Yeah, but dude, I've been trying not to write anything about football in our notes because like I know all the audience is gonna get annoyed because how excited I get about it. But
we talk too much about football.
Yeah, guys, the Kansas City Buffalo game last night.
Oh my god!
And I texted Clayton. Clayton, tell everyone I texted you right before, and I said something like, "This game is going to be electric or insane," or I said something to you.
There was pooping of the pants.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Man, dude, that like, I didn't even have words for what was happening. Dude. That's why I sent you that one meme, like
the dog.
Yeah. Wasn't that game? I heard someone say is like one of the best playoff games of all time. I mean, that was nuts.
Honestly, man, the combo of the two playoff games, the Rams and Bucks, followed by by the Chiefs, and dude, it was just couple of things. One made me feel like it was like back watching Young, and back when we were kids, and they the second game, right? The Kansas City game, and Josh Allen and Mahomes were just like, they were just like like, dude, it was like freaking laser beams. Like, what were they like? Every pass was perfect. I mean, there obviously there were throwaways, all that stuff, but the one I will say, as a defender, as a defensive player, that was my one about the game, was it was hard to watch from a defensive standpoint, because they were just getting both teams were just getting chewed up defensively. But with that one exception, I would venture to say, for me, best football I've seen in 20 years. I've personally watched.
And I'm not even allowed to say this because I'm a Raider fan, but I'll say it anyway. So those two teams, and then one of them, Kansas City, is obviously in the Raiders division. But man, I love watching Kansas City and Buffalo. Those are, outside of the Raiders, those are my two favorite teams to watch, and my two favorite quarterbacks to watch by far. I just love watching the uniqueness of Mahomes and how he plays very unconventional. He's just a stud. And then Josh Allen is just like a gunslinger. Like, he just chucks it downfield. He runs. He's not scared to get hit. And I love that. That dude weighs almost 250 pounds, and he's a quarterback. And he's not scared of anyone. He just runs like he's a running back. Like, I love it.
I didn't realize he was that heavy. How
he's
tall
like
is he?
240, 250. He's a big dude.
He's what, 6'3", 6'4"? 6'3"?
I would say somewhere around there. Yeah, he's definitely a big dude. So
well, that's not, Mahomes is not much more. He's got to be like 6'2", right? He's a little shorter generally, isn't he? It's always hard to tell with these guys,
I feel like he's around that height, maybe a little shorter, and I would guess he's probably 225. So like
about the same.
Smaller than Allen, but more of like.
Oh, is he
a normal quarterback, though.
So Mahomes is 6'3". Allen.
Is he 225? Was I right?
Oh, here, I didn't look at the weight. Let's see. 6'3", height and weight, 229. So you weren't far off.
Okay. It wasn't super off. And then what, Josh Allen, 240, 250?
Let's see, Josh Allen.
6'3", 6'4", maybe.
Like, it's immediately like Josh Allen height.
I know.
Height and weight. So Josh Allen is 6'5".
Oh, okay.
Yeah, interesting. And 238. Oh, interesting.
230. Okay. So almost 240.
Josh Allen looked more, looked like he was carrying around more muscle to me last night. But based on this, wait, did I do that right? No, he is. Okay, 238. Okay, 229.
But he's a little bit taller than Mahomes too.
Right. Okay, I did it backwards in my head. I thought that was conversely, but I was.
So they're pretty similar, and then Mahomes can run too. He won't like maybe necessarily run through people,
right.
The same that I guess Allen will. But then again, Mahomes is on a $500 million contract, so my assumption would be he's probably not supposed to take hits, or whatever. So
absolutely. When the commentators said it perfectly last night, I'm not going to try to repeat exactly, but the idea was basically they were like Mahomes. Mahomes is Josh Allen from 10 years ago. Wait, did I say that right? Not 10, but however,
Mahomes
you know what I mean?
Like Josh Allen. Why am I like getting that twisted in my head?
Because I said it really weird. What I'm trying to say is, as awesome as Josh Allen is, he's not Mahomes, who has had the success and repeated success over a long time. At this point, like Josh Allen.
A little bit longer.
So Josh Allen came what?
Didn't he come a year or two after Mahomes?
I thought this was like only his like third or fourth year. Because Mahomes is like 5 or 6 years now, isn't he?
Oh my gosh.
We're going off on the football tangent. Sorry, guys. Josh Allen, NFL draft.
Isn't this his third? Is it his third year in the league? Am I tripping?
2018. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
yeah, third year.
19, 20. Okay.
So and then I would guess Mahomes is like 5
16,
or 6.
Right? 17.
Yeah, that sounds about right. 6 years. Mahomes draft.
I'm thinking 2016 or 17.
2017.
2017.
Interesting.
Okay.
I thought that they had more. Okay, so Mahomes just had immediate success, and Josh Allen came in a little bit slower. Who was he playing under when he first came?
I'm not sure. I didn't start watching him till not this past season, but the season before. So to be honest, I don't even know.
Well, and to your point, exactly that what you said just now, he was not on my radar. Like, I mean, I know he's a really good player, but I just had never really watched him before yesterday.
Straight stud.
Yeah, I mean, and
straight stud.
Ridiculous. I mean, for me, he went from, oh, I know this name and I know he's a good player and I've seen him do good things, but it's not like I was ever like, I never really sat and watched him. And then as of yesterday, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm paying attention now,
Dude, here's the cool thing about Allen's versus Mahomes. So Mahomes has always been a stud. He played a bunch of sports in high school, and then also he got drafted by a professional baseball team. I'm blanking on which team did, and then obviously he chose football. Super athletic. He's always been known, always a stud, to my understanding. Allen, it was not the same way. He wasn't
he a running back?
Fighting to get attention going into college. Like, no one wanted him. Like, so he didn't get any offers to play at any D1 schools. So he literally played at a junior college his freshman year, and he grew up like pretty close to Fresno, I believe. So he was trying to build relationships with the coaches at Fresno State to play there, right? And no one wanted him. And then he went to this junior college, did fantastic, and still not that many places wanted him. And he tried again for Fresno State, proving that he did really good in junior college. They still said no.
Wow.
And so he ended up getting
now.
I'm blanking on the places, of course, because we're in the middle of an episode, but I think he got one or two scholarship offers after that. And someone's going to fact check me here. It's going to be wrong, but I think he went to Wyoming to play ball in college. And so basically, point being, just like he was just like Joe Montana, people didn't believe in him. Like, no one was seeing his talent and his effort, and now we see where he is now. So I love that kind of underdog story too. Mahomes loved the dude. Like, everything he does is great, but like Allen the whole time, fighting to get a chance, and now he's like one of the best QBs in the league.
So cool. I didn't know that. The more I learn about him, the more I want to continue to learn about him.
Yeah, he's absolutely awesome. You'll have to look into his story a little bit more so you can fact check me, because I probably said something wrong there, like with where he went to school or whatever. But definitely do that.
I do have to say that moment when him and I think Gabriel's the other player, which I was not super familiar with him either. But when they thought they had won and they went and they hugged each other and they were so stoked, dude, that moment hurt my heart, man. Because I was just like, okay, this isn't Brady, which that's the whole other thing we haven't even talked about. Which I seriously, I almost texted you during that first game. I literally almost texted you, freaking. Now I'm saying it right. I almost texted you saying freaking Pats, like just not even thinking about it, because like we've just seen the Pats come back so many times, and then Brady's doing it, and it's like, it's not the Pats or the Bucks, it's freaking Brady, right? I mean, it's all three of them, right? But Brady is the piece, right?
Yep.
Anyway, not to go off on the further football tangent, but what a couple of games last night, and for completely different reasons.
Yep, absolutely. And dude, you want to get into some fitness? You want to do some fitness? Yeah, you down?
Give me some fitness.
So let's start with. I had to do this today. I saw so many outlandish, funny things this week in the fitness industry. So I want to start with some of the funny things that I heard this week in the fitness industry. So just for the audience, just so you guys have seen all this too, but just to give you guys an idea about what some of these outlandish things are. And as I've said before, if it sounds like it's too good to be true or it's a little far-fetched, normally that's the case in the fitness industry. Maybe that applies to all industries. But here's the first thing I heard, and I had to watch this multiple times because it was so silly. It was hard for me to believe that someone said it, but I heard it with my own ears. And someone, don't know their name, he claimed it takes 3 years to digest protein, or he said specifically to digest a protein shake. What
the deep sigh.
What do I do with that? Like 3 years to digest a food?
So
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just going to say, like, the thing that comes to my mind is when, like, the classic thing of people being like, oh, if you swallow gum, it's going to stay in your intestine for 40,
Oh, yeah.
50, 70, your whole, whatever it was. I think it was
70
like,
years.
yeah, I think it was like 5 years or whatever, right? But that was based on somebody testing the material and saying, oh, this material wouldn't break down in the system for 5 years. Yeah, but you poop it out. You're like, you know what I'm saying? Same thing here is like, even if you were to make some kind of argument that it takes so long to digest protein that it's not worth ingesting it, you're pooping. You're gonna poop it out before it takes you 3 years to digest. It's not gonna stay in your body for 3 years digesting. Like, that's asinine.
Yep, that's insane. So I put that as number one. Number one being the least outlandish of the next two, out of the three things that we're going to go over. So the second one,
That's the least outlandish.
dude, they're all pretty outlandish. But I'm gonna actually no, we'll say that's number three. Okay. So that got third place. That'll be more accurate. So second place for the most outlandish claim this week. This one's just funny though. So this one, if you do the carnivore diet, you don't get sunburned. That one's just funny.
Okay, wait. So on my notes, it just says, if you do the carnivore diet, you don't get, and there's nothing else. So the sunburn listeners, that was as much of a surprise to me as it was to you guys. Let me repeat that for everybody, for myself mostly. If you do the carnivore diet, you don't get sunburned.
That's it. That is a claim I saw with a picture of someone that was sunburned and said that they went off carnivore that week or something.
Oh my god, do they live in the Matrix? Is it never mind. I'm not gonna go down that tangent. Not gonna do that. We don't need to give people the credence. I'm like getting all upset about stupid don't.
we're trying to be more entertaining on this podcast, so I figured this would be a great little way to segue into me and Clayton being more entertaining is this. So that got number two. This is number one for the week. Clay, tell me if you disagree, but this one does almost get me a little upset because this came from a doctor's mouth, which the other two did not. So number one, everyone, for the most outlandish claim in the fitness industry this week is, if you eat fruit, it is slowly poisoning you. That was from a doctor.
Dude, this is like one of those things where you almost don't even want to talk about it because it's like almost like talking about it is like, I don't feel. It feels like somebody's almost trolling us. You know what I mean?
So this was my. Okay, can we put our tinfoil hats on for a second? Yes. Can we do that?
I've got mine literally right here, dude.
Okay, tinfoil hats going on. This is what I thought, and so a lot of people that I know in the fitness industry saw the person promoting this. The person that promoted this, I actually don't even remember the name. They are a doctor, though, and they have hundreds of thousands of followers. So naturally, a lot of people saw this, including people that actually have an idea of what they're talking about. So this was the claim. I sent a message to who is it? Dr. Joey Munoz. He's been on the show before.
Yeah.
So
different doctor, everybody. Very different doctor. This is a good doctor.
Yeah, PhD doctor. So he knows what he's talking about with nutrition. So I sent him a message and I said, here's my tinfoil hat theory, which isn't that crazy. But so this guy has a huge following, and how the Instagram algorithm works, one of the ways that things get viewed, if a lot of people engage with your post, that is one of the ways. So if there's likes do help, but if there's a ton of comments from someone's post, that post is going to get viewed by more people. There's also more of a chance that post is going to go to the Explore page where millions of people can view that person's post. So I partly think it was done intentionally, knowing it would cause all this anger and discourse in his comment section.
You're right.
I mean, because look, tons of people saw it.
You're totally right. That's it. It's all the algorithm game, which is the whole reason why we're here talking to you guys on this platform and not through. I mean, yes, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Those are not our primary platforms. Our primary platform is here because, well, anyone can, we could figure out ways to abuse this too. But that point being is like, the game of getting seen in social media is counterproductive to the game of finding what is healthy and happy, what works for you to be healthy and happy. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. unless like you really think that your happiness is going to be driven by, taking a really good selfie. If that's the case, rock it. But generally speaking, if you want to feel good, exactly. Both Jake and I just rock on, bro. Yeah, I love the rock on. Anyway, it's funny actually. We could be talking about anything, and we can go off on some rock tangent. I'll be like, rock tangent, woo! Because now all I'm thinking about is like literally. I saw that, I was like, Roddy James Dio, yeah, bro.
And speaking of what you just said, and I forgot to put this in our notes down here with our fitness section, but that goes hand in hand with fitness marketing in particular. And I'm starting to learn this isn't just specific to the fitness industry. Tons of industries do this. I just see it most in the fitness industry. So anyway, something that we stand for here, and this is going to mean over time, it will be harder for mission-driven made or any company that does believe in, integrity and certain things to be more profitable, but I don't care. Something that, oh gosh, it disturbs me is the fear-based marketing that some of these people do. So like, for example, eat fruit and it's going to poison you. So when you see these outlandish claims or these crazy type of marketing techniques, take a couple minutes and research a little farther. What I mean, when you see this, 99% of the time, click on that person's information, go to a link in their bio. There's probably going to be a book they're trying to sell.
Yep.
It's normally a best-selling book, and it's something that's like an anti-carb zealot type of person.
Right.
And I did look into this person's background, and he was a best-selling author and promoting that like eating fruit is terrible for you. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So it's the fear-based marketing drives me absolutely insane, like scaring people to buying their product. Now the other thing that really bugs me, and this is very common, and people use it too much, in my opinion, and I don't think it's ethical to do so, is fear of missing out and that being the only way to sell a product. So so guys, I'm not talking about like what you'll see a lot is people certain times of the year, they will have a product that goes on discount. And so they'll say something like, oh yeah, if you buy by December 31st, then it's 50% off. That's fine. Like that's completely fine, obviously having discounts, but I've witnessed this with my own eyes is on certain companies' websites, there's literally a clock at the top of the website, and it'll say you have 8 hours to buy this for 50% off. So looking at that, it's like, what's the big deal with that? But what happens, you go back to that same website the next day, the clock restarts, and they just keep restarting. So they're making you feel like you're going to miss out by lying to you and having this little running clock saying like you have 8 more hours to do this. So that is something that I don't stand for. Or here, I saw this recently, and I don't remember if I told you about this one already. So this guy kept popping up in my feed on Mission Driven Made on Instagram, right? His little sponsored ad. He was I think a business coach, a podcast coach, and something like that. He kept popping up. So I just clicked on him. I was just like, I want to see if he's being truthful with what he's saying, right? So you click on him and it says, sign up here for my free mastermind. Now, normally I know what that means, but I'm like, you know what? I talk crap about these people all the time. I'm going to give this a shot, and I actually want to see if he's being truthful, right? I just want to test it one time because I keep seeing this guy pop up. So I put in my information to see his free mastermind. So I put it in there.
I'm sorry, free mastermind. Like, is that like a master class? What is?
So mastermind. So this would be an example. So say you are a music teacher, a guitar expert, singing expert, whatever. At mastermind, you are the expert. People are going to come to you. Normally, they do it over like a virtual live meeting. So it could be a giant Zoom call or Skype, and people are asking you questions, and you're providing them service that way.
That's
so
cool.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with masterminds. Do your thing. So that's the main way to do it. Sometimes people, the mastermind, it's pre-recorded.
Gotcha.
So it's a video. So
it's like masterclass, but a different version of it.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So similar. And again, that's fine. Whatever. So. And I knew something like this was going to happen, so I signed up for his free mastermind class. Now, so I start watching. It's a video format. It's previously recorded. And just as I suspected, there was no actual information in there. It was a very well done video, very high quality, and the whole video was talking about selling you into this like mastermind group or some paid
The next
service.
level.
Yeah, exactly. Paid service that he has. So basically manipulated you thinking like this was going to be a free mastermind when there was no mastermind. There was zero information. It was to get you to then go and pay for some subscription mastermind group. So like the mastermind group that costs money, there's nothing wrong with that. It's the fact that he lied to get you there.
Right.
So that, which is like a kind of manipulative way of upselling someone also, those things tick me off. And I know we said this on the show a few times. Clayton and I are never going to do that. There's never going to be this false, weird way to get you to a product or service that tricks you like that. And it's annoying that those tactics are normal and okay to most people.
Yeah. From a psychological standpoint, one of the things that was really compelling for me when I was studying psychology was the Psychology of Persuasion. I took a course. I think this one was either, I don't remember if it was at Long Beach or if it was in San Francisco, but the idea basically was that there are all these kind of tried and true research-based methods for convincing people of X, Y, or Z. It doesn't really matter. It's the persuasion is the key, right? So, Jake mentioned one when he's talking about the clock that keeps running. I don't want to butcher it. It might be foot in the door. I don't remember. I'm not going to try to say what kind of it is, but basically, these companies are not just blindly making decisions about marketing. They're hiring other companies and other organizations whose whole job it is and whose whole goal it is getting you or getting us to buy whatever the company is selling, right? So it doesn't matter whether we're talking about, toilet paper, fitness, or, the next, piece of entertainment. I don't know, whatever. Those are all bad examples. The next big camera phone, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, what are we doing and why? What are we doing and why? Hey, can I say that one more time? What are we doing and why? It's not just what we're talking about when we're exercising. It's not just what we're talking about when we're eating. It's the questions that we're asking as other people present information to us. Perfect example here. I want you guys to ask yourselves, why are Jake and Clayton here and why? Wait, what did I say that right? What are they doing and why, I think is what I was trying to say, right? And the answer is pretty clear. We are providing our experience and our, both in life and our professional experience. And that's what we're doing. And the why is because, one, we think it's really important to disseminate this truthful information and to combat the salesman that you're getting most of the time. And two, is because we like it. That's the other big thing. And you guys know, because anybody who's listening to this podcast is probably listening because they can tell that we actually enjoy what we're talking about, right? So the what and the why should be obvious. If the what and the why in any of these situations are not obvious, you either need to take a deeper dive and figure it out, or, maybe just walk away and find somewhere where the what and the why are very apparent, like here at Mission Driven Made.
Dude, you brought up a great point. Like, none of that's by accident. That type of marketing is because it's known it's going to drive way more clicks and way more revenue. Like the fear base and these clocks and you really have to think about it. Why are there so many? If you click on these different advertisements, why do so many of them, if you go to the bottom, that say, oh, you need to sign up now or you don't get that discount? But you could click on it every day. It's going to say the same thing. It's not truthful. It is done to pressure you to get you to sign up for something. So that is completely intentional, and we are never going to do that here. If there's ever discounts for services or everything is going to be crystal clear. There's never going to be manipulation. Now, I get probably most worked up with that, even more than when I hear doctors say outlandish things about fruit poison use. There's something so wrong about. I think it's wrong because it's so accepted now. Like those are the different techniques of marketing.
Yeah. Well, it reveals a deeper question that we will be exploring on this podcast at some point in detail, which is even within the scientific studies that we use and learn from, there's always nuance and there's always a deeper story, such as what was the organization that commissioned this research, right? So not to throw, a wrench, gum up the works, but it's really important that everybody really is on the same page about the fact that it's convoluted by nature. And though we're here talking about unfiltered fitness truth, that requires Jake and I to continue to learn, because things change every single day. And kind of our best bet with staying up on top of things is to we talk about it a lot here on the podcast. So just being willing to explore, being willing to find what's right for you. And likewise, if you find some IG trainer and they really inspire you and, they're doing all the things that we're talking about that me and Jake don't like, but that works for you, like, don't let me and Jake sit here and tell you not to do that. I would listen to what Jake and I have to say and make a decision for yourself about whether you want to continue to do that or not. But the idea being here that, a million ways to skin a cat, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go into, instead of us just making fun of, because I know it's easy and fun to do. Let's go into something that some of the listeners can take away after the podcast today. So let's go into the number one muscle building principle. So here's some of the juicy stuff for you. So the number one principle in muscle building. So if you're looking to really improve in the gym, and this is not just muscle building, it applies to improvement and just strength in general as well. Now, it's called progressive overload. So what this means is, over time, if you are looking to improve in the gym, whether it's strength, normally when people are talking about this, like I mentioned, it's normally referring to muscle building. But if you want to improve, you have to apply progressive overload. So an easy example of this, say today I go and bench press 100 pounds, okay? And I do it for 10 reps. So next week, a way to progressively overload would be bench pressing the 100 pounds for 11 reps. And then the next week, that could be 12 reps. So that's a very basic way to apply progressive overload. But the few things that we're going to go over today is a few different ways to apply progressive overload. So this is just something that you should always have in the back of your mind, especially if you're doing your own programming and you're going to the gym and you want to improve over time. So here's a few different ways for you. So the example I just said, that's a very common way. It's essentially doing more reps than you did the week before. But I want to start with one that I personally, my own personal preference, I think is one of the best ways to progressively overload, and that is first the intensity of the load. So what that would mean is, say, again, we'll use the bench press example. Say today I go and bench press 100 pounds and I do it for 10 repetitions. So next week, when I go to bench press again, I'm going to do 105 pounds and try to do it for 10 repetitions. So right there, I increased the intensity of the load. I personally like this way of progressively overloading because we can see a tangible difference so easily. If we are slowly improving our strength over time, most likely you're also building muscle. Now, those two things, muscle building and strength, although they can be partially separated, they can't completely be separated. They go hand in hand. So if you notice over time you're getting stronger, you are probably most of the time building a bit of muscle. So that's number one, is intensity of the load. Another way to progressively overload is intensity of your effort. So all that means is how much you are exerting yourself with a set. So one way to know that you are progressively overloading and you're improving is, say, again, we go and lift that 100 pounds one week, and to do the 10 repetitions, it takes everything out of you. You're giving all the effort you have, and it's really hard. But then next week, when you go to bench press at 100 pounds, the intensity of your effort, it doesn't feel so hard. It feels a little bit easier than it did last time. So the intensity of the effort changes. It's going to get a little bit easier. Now, moving on to this is probably the most common way that people progressively overload, and this is increasing the volume, and this can either be through repetitions or through sets. So going back to the original example of bench pressing 100 pounds for 10 reps one week, the next week going up to 11 reps, and then 12 reps, 13 reps, so on and so forth, or adding on an additional set. So if you normally do 3 sets, this would be adding an additional set. Now, there is nothing wrong with doing extra reps like this and adding extra sets. I do think sometimes for some people it can be to a detriment.
Yeah.
There comes a point of diminishing returns when we keep adding volume. Now, this is going to be depending on how much volume you're already doing. So understand, I'm not speaking to everyone here, but if you're already someone that's doing a good amount of volume, you know, you're doing 15 or 20 sets or so per session, and you just keep adding volume, there's going to be a point where it falls away from being optimal to where you're going to actually make progress. You're going to be doing kind of the term that I've heard thrown around a lot is just junk volume. So to a certain point, those extra sets or those extra reps might not actually help you improve with your muscle building or building strength. And again, I just want to mention this depends on what you are already doing at the moment.
Yep.
So if you are moderately high with your volume already, or you're very high, I think it's a smarter approach to think about getting a little bit stronger and not adding so much more volume first. Clayton, I heard you say something. I would love to hear your thoughts about that last comment there.
Oh, I don't remember specifically what I said. I think I was just generally agreeing with you. Is generally when I'm making noises and while you're saying something, it's like, or you know, like a lot of times it's like
Scratch the chin.
Yeah, I know. I just shaved. Not that I usually have much to do with, but so it's like I can't like scratch it. There's nothing scratchy there.
The 3 hairs, right?
Yeah, exactly. All 3 of them, and they're not curly.
And then the less known way of progressively overloading, these ones aren't talked about, but they're very important. One is increasing your range of motion in a movement. So that technically could be progressive overloading. Let me give you an example I'll use from my own personal anecdote. So for me, I've always been very tight around my different joints. Ankles are no exception. My ankles are always very tight. So if I don't stretch them, or if I don't try to quote unquote push it during the movement, it's very hard for me to descend way below parallel in a back squat. If you have tight ankles, it's going to prevent you from being able to squat as deep as you can. So for me, a way to progressively overload, say 1 week, I was getting just above parallel in my squat, and then after that, my form might break down, so I'm not going to do that. Then a few weeks later, using the same amount of weight in my back squat, going a few inches deeper and maintaining good form. So you just increase your range of motion. This is also a way to progressively overload. And then the last one that I have written down here, and it does kind of go hand in hand with range of motion, is just overall improving technique. So let's, again, for the 5th time, let's go back to the bench press at 100 pounds. Say you did it for 10 reps 1 week. Your form might not be so optimal. It might look a little wonky. You might be pushing it up a little bit higher with your right arm than your left, or vice versa. It just doesn't look great. The technique isn't great. But next week, when you go to bench press at 100 pounds again for 10 repetitions, it's a lot smoother. Your arms are more even. Everything looks more balanced. That would still be considered progressively overloading. So if there's one thing to keep in mind in the gym if you're looking to make improvements, especially in muscle building, it's going to be progressive overload.
Absolutely. This is one of the things that finding a good trainer, if you don't know, you don't have experience walking into this, finding a good trainer, this is kind of a big part of what they do for you. Even a mediocre trainer, not to say that, certainly a good trainer is going to help you do this more effectively than a mediocre trainer, but having somebody to kind of direct your efforts when you're first learning with progressive overload is really important, because it's easy to get bogged down in the details of how we increase intensity, how we increase load, because there's a little bit of an art to it. There's a little bit of a nuance, and you've got to kind of be able to feel it out, and you've got to be able to challenge yourself, but also not challenge yourself too much. So it's a lot of kind of intersecting variables and finding the right middle ground for the individual who's doing the movement. That said, if you're already working with somebody who knows, or you yourself already know kind of the general principles of this, you can really kind of simplify it in some ways. And what I mean by that is, if you choose your goal and you choose the actions to pursue that goal, all of the things that we're talking here end up becoming details in the story along how you got to your goal. You know, they're details, and they're important details, which is why we're talking about them, right? But they are tools in the toolbox to use in sometimes simultaneously, sometimes, individually, depending on your goals. So, we've talked about in a previous podcast how if you're just starting out, some of this will happen naturally based on just kind of, we were talking about training strength versus endurance in that podcast, but it applies here. The idea being that if you're just starting out, kind of a combination of these things is not only important, but it's you need it. It's necessary. Whereas as you go farther down the line and you have built up that foundation of skills and strength and endurance, now all of a sudden these are tools that you can use at your disposal individually to further a specific goal. And that would actually be a really interesting topic for another day, is talking about having a whole episode just on progressive overload and talking about each individual topic and how we can, for those of us who are a little more advanced and ready for that kind of level of nuance, I think it could be a lot of fun. I think that'd be a lot of fun even just for you and me as professionals to kind of talk that out on a deeper level.
Yeah, I would love to do. We'll do that in the future for sure. Maybe a Friday debrief episode.
Yeah.
Let's do everything progressive overload. And a thing that I love Clayton said, I can't quote exactly how you said it, but just make sure when we're keeping this principle in mind in the gym that you are slowly progressive overloading. And what I mean, I made this mistake for years, and it's ego driven, at least for some of it, is, so we'll go back to bench pressing and say this week I do 100 pounds. Next week I do 150. The next week 200. And it's just, you're adding the increments of weight or improvement. It's a lot.
Right.
When you start doing that on a continuous basis, there's going to be a point where it's going to be harder to catch up or recover, or your technique is going to be less than optimal.
Yeah. And
for me, that always set me up for sore joints, for injuries, and all that. So I don't want to fearmonger you guys to not push it ever and say you're going to get injured. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but we do want to think longevity purposes in the gym. Just take a slower approach.
Yeah, that's
the difference for me that
that's
I have changed is, instead of always having to add more weight week by week, which that's great, but I want to improve my form and technique before I move on to more weight. I think that's smarter. But again, your ego is always going to be telling you to do more, instead of like, okay, let's take a step back and let's improve my technique first before I move on to the heavier load. So it's definitely going to be an ego check, which will probably affect newer and intermediate lifters more. Especially, you're going to have all those newbie gains the first year or two. It's going to be very easy to progress, and it is going to slow down at some point. You're not going to always be able to add 20, 30 pounds in your bench press every week. That's going to slow down. So think slow progress and longevity. At least for most of us, this is probably the best and most optimal course of action to take.
You'll always be safe lifting, you'll always be safer not pushing your load. So always, A good rule of thumb I would say is don't raise your weight until you're like bored of the weight that you're at. Because what happens is our brains become challenged and occupied by the movement that we're doing. And then when that movement becomes less challenging, our brain becomes less challenged. And so all of a sudden our interest starts to wane. And it's not like, oh, I'm just going to go and put these weights down. But for those of us who are very used to doing the same movements over and over again, burnout just in terms of wanting to, do this like particular movement is a very real thing. So it's really important that as you're talking about, we're not just talking about volume. We're talking about varying, having the ability to vary. And, I don't know. There was some theme. Hey guys, guess what? Clayton lost his train of thought again.
I think you're going down the road of like the different ways you can vary progressive overload, whether that's through additional sets, additional reps, whether that's a little bit more weight, whether that's improved range of motion. I think that's the path it sounded like you were going down.
Whether that was the path or not, that's way better. Let's follow that one. Because I took us off the road of making sense, off the linear path, and now I'm singing to pass off the fact that I ruined it.
Well, we got all the juicy stuff out there.
The juicy stuff.
We're good. So cool. We're gonna do an episode dedicated to that, and you guys will probably see that in the next couple weeks here. So let's move on to the Q&A for the day to wrap up the episode. And this is, should I follow somatotype nutrition programs? So let me do a quick review on what somatotypes are. Then we're going to go into our thoughts and opinions of whether you should do this or not. So somatotypes, I'm going to tell you the 3 different ones of them and give you specifics about them. So somatotypes, it's basically eating. The way you eat or you follow your nutrition is based upon your body. So at first it might be like, yeah, that's a great idea, but let me be a little more specific. So somatotype number 1, this would be an ectomorph. So an ectomorph would be someone that's more slender, doesn't have a lot of muscle tissue, and is known as a hard gainer. So someone that might struggle to put on weight. At least that's how it appears. So in a somatotype nutrition program, they are quote unquote supposed to eat a higher carbohydrate diet. So moving on to number 2 for the somatotypes, this would be a endomorph. An endomorph is naturally going to have a higher body fat percentage, a little bit wider, stockier of a structure, and they are told do a low carb diet. And now moving on to a mesomorph, this is someone that is more lean and naturally carries a lot more muscle tissue. And normally the recommendation for that person is a balanced diet. It's funny, I'm looking over these right now, Clay, and I remember I did a post on this about a month or 2 ago, and on accident, so I did 3 pictures of the different body types, and then I accidentally labeled the ectomorph and endomorph incorrectly. I did it backwards, but you can only edit, obviously, an IG post, like a caption. You can't edit the actual post. Right. It's like, crap, I'm about to get called out for this. But anyways, though, so I messed that up. But those are the 3 somatotypes. And it's still pretty prevalent today with you seeing these promoted. Like, I still see ads with this online, someone promoting for you to take their quiz to see what your somatotype is, and then they have their nutrition program based off this. Now, this whole idea or concept was started 80, 90 years ago or so, and it's been debunked, I guess would be the good word, over time, or at least shown that it's not optimal. Now, here is why I don't think it's a good idea to follow this. Now, one of them being, so someone's appearance can't always give away what they are supposed to eat. So, for example, if someone looks more like an endomorph and carries a little bit more body fat, and so just assuming that they're always going to be that way is incorrect. Over time, depending on your training and consistency, your body is going to adapt, and that person that may look like an endomorph or an ectomorph could be more toward the mesomorph type of a body type. So that's point number one. So your physique is going to change over time if you're consistent. And so following this specific somatotype diet is going to be a hindrance to a lot of you. And the second point that I have here is your nutritional requirements are going to be way better linked to the the training stimulus that you apply to it. So for example, if you're someone that does resistance training and your goals. So that's going to be a way more accurate way or approach to know how to eat. An example would be, say, because I mentioned goals here. So say you resistance train, that's your primary way of exercising, and your goal is to gain weight. You want to put on weight. So through that, most people are going to eat probably moderate to higher carbohydrate diet along with moderate to high proteins, and the rest being fat. That would be most accurate with most people that are trying to gain weight, and then of course eating enough calories. Now say the other end of that coin, if your goal is, oh, I want to lose body fat, so your macronutrients would change based upon that. So that would look more like moderately high protein, probably a little bit lower carbohydrate, and then the rest fats. So as you can see, those two situations based on that person's goal can be completely different and not based on your somatotype. So it's going to be based on the stimulus you're putting on your body and your goals way more than how your body looks, and especially how it can adapt over time. I mean, think there's plenty of the ectomorphs or people that look a little bit slender. If they resistance train for 10, 15 years, some of them would then look like a mesomorph. So I personally think this is a terrible approach, and it just confuses people. Yeah. And the recommendation I would give to someone starting out, I think simple is normally the way to go, especially to start. Eating a balanced diet that has plenty of protein, has carbs and fats, pretty equal is fine to start, and then see how you feel along the way. If you feel you are, lacking a little bit of energy, you may need to up your calories a little bit. You may need to up your carbohydrates before you train. If you feel sluggish after taking carbohydrates, okay, no problem. Let's see how it feels eating a little bit higher of fats and maybe a little bit lower of carbohydrates. And then over time, just refining it. I think that's a lot smarter of an approach than, okay, my body looks this way, I'm going to follow this very specific type of eating. So that's my take on it.
From a psychological standpoint, there is a tiny little interesting value, and then there's a lot of potential for damage. The teeny little bit of value that I'm just going to throw in there is that for people who, especially when this, we'll call it information. It is technically information, even though it's not like the most reliable information. When it came out, it was a validation for people who were heavier that it was okay to be heavier. Because even if it was provided by misinformation, it normalized having more weight on your body, which we have a problem of in our culture because of Hollywood and whatever, right? Social media, whatever. So there was value to it at one point. That little bit of value aside, there is tons of room for abuse, which is what you kind of just touched on, right? And one of the biggest problems, especially in the context of what we're talking about, is that people use it to say, oh, are you an endomorph? Well, let's help you become an ecto or a mesomorph. Or really, let's say, are you an endomorph or an ectomorph? Let's help you become a mesomorph, because that's really what it effectively, regardless of intentions, does. Because what you see, a nice balanced middle ground surrounded by two less balanced examples, right? So whenever we're talking about health, whenever we're talking about fitness, you'll notice that there's always a theme of finding relative balance. So every time that you ever hear us talking about anything whatsoever, period, we're talking about it in a very general, we're talking about something that's very specifically relative in a very general way. And that's why we talk about all the different aspects of it, because we want to make sure all that information is available to you. Here's a little piece of information specifically about this that might be helpful to you. I myself am a perfect example of I've been all three of these. So for me personally, when I start, if it just doesn't make sense to say one or the other is the way to go, is like how I am, because
Right.
I've been endomorph. I've been ectomorph. I've been endomorph where I've had, 50 to 80 plus pounds of just straight body fat, excess body fat, where I was technically obese. And I've been an ectomorph where I was so lean that literally I came home from Long Beach one time and my stepmom was like, "Are you are you on cocaine and like whatever else?" I think coke was the thing she was worried about because I was so skinny, right? And I might have been dabbling, but I wasn't like using and wasting away, right? And then now I've come full circle back around to, as you know, a grown up now, I've learned to start building habits and discipline, and that's led me to now I would consider my body is solidly mesomorph. So, when we start talking about, from my perspective, the validity of,
Tomato, tomato, exactly.
But somatotype, when we talk about somatotype nutrition, it completely disregards the fact that our bodies are a reflection of a set of circumstance and behaviors and decisions that we make. Nothing more. Well, let me rephrase. Sorry, that was wrong. Not nothing more. In the context of what we're talking about, how you treat your body from a nutrition and physical standpoint should be relative to and in line with you finding proper balance within your system.
I like it. That balance, it's still something I'm learning more about every day and understanding that in most situations, balance is the right answer for most people. If we leave nuance out of it, it's normally balanced. There's some situations I may not agree with, but like generally speaking, with things related to fitness, balance is normally going to be your best bet. Just about anything in fitness and nutrition. So,
and let me just also qualify to say, like Jake just said, there are always exceptions. We're talking about general rule, and when we're talking, a lot of times, what you'll notice is, in a lot of ways, Jake is directly addressing folks that are like himself, that are really high performing and are really looking for the details and the nuance, whereas I'm speaking more directly to the people who might not have any idea about the language and stuff we're talking about here, right? Like that's because Jake is a high performer and I'm a layman, and we meet in the middle. But that's, that should just go to show the broad range of folks that we're talking to here, based on the broad range of folks that are talking here, Jake and myself.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. If you found value in our content today and you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our show. And if you could leave us a review down there, it'd be greatly appreciated. It'll take just a few seconds. It'll help grow the show tremendously. If you guys would like to follow us on Instagram.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off. I was just saying don't hit the record button.
Oh,
Guys, I'm
gotcha.
sorry. Jake we had such a nice send off, and I just waved in the camera, and I was trying to get his attention to not do it, and I ruined it. So sorry, listeners. Sorry, Jake.
Oh yeah, no, we'll just do the little part again for the podcast that's recorded then. All right, everyone. If you enjoyed the content and found value in it today, go ahead and subscribe to our show. If you haven't, and leave us a review down there at the bottom on your phone. You're going to see a place to do it. It'll just take a few seconds there. It'll help grow the show tremendously. If you like to find us on Instagram, you can find us at Mission Driven Made. We'd love to connect with you there. We're also most active there. And lastly, we started a online free private fitness community, and it's called The Forum. You're also going to see a link in the show description there to click and then apply to the forum, we'd love to let you in. All the forum is just an online space for other listeners of the podcast where you can connect, you can start conversations, and it's a place where you can ask questions to Clayton or I. We're going to be on there every day checking in. This is any question related to fitness, nutrition, mindset, lifestyle, programming, anything that you need help with. You could write it right there on the forum, and we would love to assist you. So yeah, go ahead and subscribe to that. We would love to have you. All right, everyone, we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Love all you guys. And until next time, stay mission driven.
All right. So I imagine that's do, and we're timing out. So the recording in terms of podcast has ended. So for our Twitch viewers, we have an excellent opportunity right now to do a little live Q&A. I recognize there's not tons of you in there right now, so no worries. I'm not expecting anyone to jump up and ask questions, but no, if you do, at the end of every episode, we will have a live Q&A section where you can go ahead and ask questions on the live chat, and we'll answer them. And yeah, you'll get, it's going to be a little behind the scenes, a little less formal post-recording moment with Twitch. So make sure if you have any questions, you shout out on chat. We are in the process of setting up our Discord, but make sure you go check out our Instagram, the forum via Facebook. If you search Mission Driven Made on Facebook, you'll find the forum. And then, yeah, make sure you go check us out on Spotify and Apple Music, like Jake said. So, yeah. So we're going to give you about 3 seconds to post any more questions. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Anyway, guys, we're going to go and play the tunes and do a little send-off. So thanks for being here. We'll be back tomorrow, 9:30-ish, and we'll make sure to post that announcement. So until then, you guys, stay mission-driven. Although I said that, and now I don't have the music pulled up, so now I'm like, do. Oh, here it is. Dance party. Dance party. Jake can't hear it, but he's dancing.
That's the funny thing. I can't dance at all.
Oh, can you hear the music now? Oh, you can hear the music now. Cool. The new setup lets you hear the music. That's fucking sick. All right, cool. Well, that makes it easier for when we run this.
Your mic sounded better today.
Good. Let's see. Oh, that's not the right one. There we go. Okay. Thanks for watching, you guys. Here's the music again.
Oops.
It's coming together. Yeah, we're still alive. The mics are still hot, but you can hear it now. I was about to say the music's playing, but